Cash Patel, everyone.
This is what happens when you let good cops be cops. The FBI and our partners are proud to stand here today together to bring justice to the family of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, this is what happens when you let good cops be cops. We're going to debunk this bullshit that the FBI caught the shooter. We're going to debunk that. You see, I'm very big on what people say. I'm a former Army interrogator, and I was trained to listen to the words you say because the words you say are very important. So we're going to look at what Cash Patel said, what the governor of Utah said during this press conference, and we're going to debunk some shit and we're going to analyze some shit. But first, let's listen to some more.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him.
No, you didn't. No. We're going to debunk this shooter was caught narrative. That's the governor of Utah, by the way. And after I'm finished debunking this he was caught narrative, we're going to look at some really disturbing shit that the governor said. In case you didn't watch this press conference, in case you missed it, there's some gross and alarming things that you need to see, but I'll jump into that into a minute. First, back to the lies.
In 33 hours, we have made historic progress for Charlie.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. We got him. This is what happens when good cops be good cops. This is historic progress. Why don't we let the governor tell us what really happened? Because the shooter wasn't caught. Governor, tell us what really happened. Before I get into this full breakdown, please like the video, comment, and subscribe.
On the evening of September 11th, a family member of Tyler Robinson reached out to a family friend who contacted the Washington County Sheriff's Office with information that Robinson had confessed to them or implied that he had committed the incident.
Oh, so wait a minute. You didn't catch him. He confessed to a family member and they turned him in. You spent the first half of this press conference talking about how good cops are good cops and we did so much work. Cash Patel at one point went into all the assets they used. We used fixed wing assets. We were flying back and forth across the country. He talked about the vice president being there, the president being there, and all this wasted money, time, and effort. You didn't catch him. He turned himself in. You know what you also didn't do? You didn't mention that he was a cishet white man raised by Republican parents in a red state around guns. You didn't mention that. You didn't mention that he wasn't a left-leaning lunatic. In fact, you provided some uncorroborated evidence in this conference that will allow people to continue to think he is a left-leaning lunatic. You provided some unverified single source information that played into that narrative, didn't you? Listen to what you did say. Let's play what you did say.
Investigators interviewed a family member of Robinson who stated that Robinson had become more political in recent years. The family member referenced a recent incident in which Robinson came to dinner prior to September 10th, and in the conversation with another family member, Robinson mentioned Charlie Kirk was coming to UVU. They talked about why they didn't like him and the viewpoints that he had. The family member also stated Kirk was full of hate and spreading hate. The family member also confirmed Robinson had a gray Dodge Challenger.
So this story hasn't been vetted. This is a single family member telling them about a single interaction they had with him. Now, this story could be true word for word. I'm not saying it's not, but this is irresponsible to report it this way because, first of all, let me say a few things. First of all, there are people in my own family who don't agree with me politically because they are MAGA and they misrepresent my views all the time. That's number one. When you're talking about a single source of information, you got to take into account personal opinion and personal interpretation. Second of all, not liking Charlie Kirk is not exclusive to being on the left. In fact, did you know that well-known white supremacist, well-known white nationalist Nick Fuentes has been beefing with Charlie Kirk over the last week on the internet? Nick Fuentes wants Charlie Kirk to debate him, and Charlie Kirk was refusing to do so, and they got this little online squabble. I won't go into all the details of it because it's not the point. The point is Nick Fuentes isn't far left. He's far right. And those who are around Nick Fuentes, who follow Nick Fuentes, who also don't like Charlie Kirk, they are not far left. But you didn't provide any alternative context like that, did you? You just provided this single family source's story because it plays into this far left narrative that he's politically motivated and doesn't like Charlie Kirk. People are going to say that's the left, but in fact, it could very well be the far right. You didn't say, hey, don't jump to conclusions, did you? You didn't verify this family member's story in any real way, did you? You just provided it because it plays into the narrative. You provided it so that people could recklessly jump to conclusions, just like you provided the information on the shell casings. Remember the shell casings that were supposed to be transgender, anti-fascist engravings? Let's see what you said about the shell casings.
Investigators noted inscriptions that had been engraved on casings found with the rifle. Inscriptions on a fired casing read, "Notices bulges, capital OWO, what's this question mark?"
How is that transgender, anti-fascist? No, that's actually this. If you go to the habitually online side of Reddit, you'll see that meme all over the place. It's a repeated phrase. It's an online meme. It's people who are habitually on that side of the internet just repeat it. It's like an inside joke kind of thing, but it's not transgender, anti-fascist. What else was on the shell casings?
Inscriptions on the 3 unfired casings read, "Hey fascist, exclamation point, catch, exclamation point."
So, hey fascist, catch. That's probably anti-fascist, you're right. Does that mean it's the Antifa of the left that you always refer to? No, it doesn't mean that, because the alternative context here is that there are plenty of people across the entire political spectrum who are against fascism. But you know that people will read that as anti-fascist, which will read that as Antifa, which will read that as left. You provided no alternative context because you are okay with people jumping to conclusions.
Up arrow symbol, right arrow, and symbol, and 3 down arrow symbols.
Up, right, down, down, down. That's video game language. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this other stuff is video game language. Hey, fascists, catch this. That's probably from a video game as well. I don't know, but because it's a company with up, right, down, 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 I must assume it is. This guy was probably a gamer.
A second unfired casing read, "Oh, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Ciao, Ciao."
It's from a song. It's an anti-Nazi song, but that doesn't mean that it's from the left. You just know that if it plays into the anti-Nazi, anti-fascism narrative, that people will assume it's from the left, when again, there's plenty of people on the far right who are anti-Nazi, anti-fascist.
And a third unfired casing read, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO."
Definitely on the left, right? Homophobic language, definitely on the left. That's obviously another habitually online Reddit joke that is not a left-leaning idea or a transgender anti-fascist idea. So where was, might I add, the transgender anti-fascism in any of that? The report came out that this was one officer's interpretation of the shell casing engravings, that they were transgender anti-fascist. Well, that officer was wrong. This is once again a person's singular interpretation that got leaked out. Why was it leaked out, by the way? Because Kash Patel was on X the whole time talking about everything happening on the goddamn investigation with full transparency. And by transparency, we mean leaking shit he shouldn't be leaking. But we also know that everything he leaked, that he was real-time posting on X, was actually just politically motivated, reckless posting to push this radical left narrative. 2 people, by the way, were incorrectly identified by Kash Patel. 2 people incorrectly identified by Kash Patel during his transparency posting on X during this entire investigation. Nothing on these shell casings was anti-fascist transgenderism. No, like this is just made up. That's just made up to push the far left narrative. And listen, to emphasize this point, I want to look at some of the drivel that the Utah governor said in his closing speech in the press conference. Once the press conference was coming to an end, he got up to the microphone and gave this little fucking speech. He got on the mic and he had this fake catch in his throat, like he was sad about to cry. The whole time he was speaking as if he was about to cry. It was cringe as fuck to watch. And he just piss poor acting. But he goes on about being angry. Watch this.
Over the last 48 hours, I have been as angry as I have ever been. As sad as I have ever been.
As sad as I've ever been. I've never been so angry in my life. So sad in my life. But then as he continues this, I'm so sad, so angry performance, he says he found strength. You can't make this shit up. He found strength in the words of Charlie Kirk. I mean, you talk about trying to make this guy a deity. They're trying to make Charlie Kirk Jesus Christ now. I found strength in the words of Charlie. Watch. You can't make this shit up. Watch.
As anger pushed me to the brink, it was actually Charlie's words that pulled me back. I'd like to share some of those. And specifically right now, if I could, I need to talk to the young people in our state.
Shut up. First of all, I'm not letting him play Charlie Kirk's words. I'll just tell you, it's blah, blah, blah. He goes on to talk about how young people loved Charlie, but some people didn't love Charlie. Some young people hated Charlie. But Charlie was still brave enough to go into their community and speak with them because he was a champion of free speech. Then he reads these 3 or 4 quotes from Charlie Kirk that basically say, if we don't have free speech, we have nothing. What, man? Listen, I refuse to play into this mischaracterization of Charlie Kirk as some champion of free speech, some American hero. No, he was a bigot who spread hateful ideologies. Okay? He said that George Floyd died of a drug overdose. That's been disproven, is not true, but it played into a racial narrative. He said that gun deaths were necessary. So while children were getting shot in school, he said that was necessary to keep the Second Amendment. He said we should bring back public executions. He did not apologize. He was unapologetically cool with bringing back public executions. There's a long list of things that Charlie Kirk said that were completely divisive, completely gross, completely motivated by racial narratives to make him out as this great American hero of champion of free speech is attempting to erase all the hate and awful things he said and to deify him. But listen, the performance didn't stop there. The governor then goes on to be fake sad about the shooter being from Utah and then brings out a bunch of racist dog whistles. I really want you to listen to this part right here.
For 33 hours, I was praying that if this had to happen here, that it wouldn't be one of us, that somebody drove from another state, somebody came from another country.
Yeah, of course you thought that. Well, quickly, I'm going to jump in here. He's praying that they're from a blue state or out of country so he can play into the blue state narrative or the xenophobic foreign terror narrative. That's what he was praying for. Okay? That's what he means by that.
Sadly, that prayer was not answered the way I had hoped for, just because I thought it would make it easier on us if we could just say, hey, we don't do that here.
It would make it easier on us if we could just say we don't do that here. This is white blindness. I call this white blindness because they refuse to take any accountability. He wants to push the narrative of we, the good old people in Utah, the white folk, don't do this. But see, right now, there's evidence right in his face that you do this. There's evidence right in your face that it is white people, cishet white people doing this. It is evidence right in your face that it's not a blue state terrorist or an out-of-country terrorist, that it's your own people. The call's coming from inside the house. And you're sad about that rather than just taking accountability and acknowledging it. You would rather just be sad about it.
But it did happen here. And it was one of us. But I want you to look at how Utahns reacted the last 2 nights. There was no rioting. There was no looting. There were no cars set on fire.
Wow.
There was no violence.
Wow. Imagine that. Imagine going from it was one of us, and rather than taking accountability for that and addressing that and having some introspection, he found a way to immediately jump as fast as possible to these racist dog whistles, rioting, looting, cars burning. These are the same language that's been recycled from the right forever. And they're basically, he's referencing the Black Lives Matter protests. They mischaracterize these protests as being riots and looting and burning cities and burning cars, when that's not true. That's a mischaracterization of the Black Lives Matter protest. But also, let's be abundantly clear. When these protests were happening, when they were protesting the murder of people like George Floyd, that Charlie Kirk mischaracterized as having died of a drug overdose when he was in fact murdered by Derek Chauvin. It's ironic you bring it up. But when they were protesting those murders, it's because historically those murders continue to happen over and over and over and over without any accountability. And there comes a point where like enough of this, it has to stop. However, this type of murder that just happened, the Charlie Kirk assassination, this white on white crime that just happened. There's no historical context where that just happens over and over and over without justice and accountability. One thing the good white people of Utah could take comfort in, and the white people of this country could take comfort in, was that there was going to be justice when and if the guy was caught. Because anytime you kill a white person, especially a well-known rich white person, there's going to be some accountability. So why would anybody need to protest? This is an absolute false equivalency and a mischaracterization just to get a dog whistle out. It was gross and it was oh so loud. And then he says this.
There were vigils and prayers and people coming together to share the humanity.
Is that a fact? There was people and prayers and vigils. No, there was HBCUs across the country being threatened. The shooter was white. Shooter was a cishet white male. There was HBCUs across the campuses across the country receiving threats. There was people all across social media. I can play you video after video after video declaring war on the left, revenge in the left. This was a radical left. We need to get together and as offline and come up with a plan to avenge Charlie. That's what's happening, and you're just skipping over that. You don't even want to talk about that. There was a bomb threat made to the DNC. There was a website made to dox people that others felt like their online reactions were too cold or too insensitive. And so they decided to dox them on a website. You don't talk about that. The director of the FBI doesn't talk about this. The governor doesn't talk about this. The president didn't go on Fox News this morning and talk about this. Nope. It's just pushing the radical left narrative. Why are none of the leadership in this country doing anything to chill the temperature? Why are they instead feeding into this radical left narrative, despite cisgendered white Mormon raised by Republican parents in a red state who did this not being radical left at all? Why? We all know why. They have an agenda. They have an agenda. And I'm going to tell you something. This agenda needs to raise alarms and red flags for you if it hasn't already. The president, the director of the FBI, the governor of Utah, the leadership of this country are purposely and intentionally stoking the flames of civil unrest in our country, and they have no intention, none, of bringing the temperature down. This is dangerous, and I don't see them changing their ways because they see this as a way to silence opposition and seize full autocratic power.